In last few lectures, we have been discussing regarding the dynamic balancing of rotors. Especially, we have described methods how to balance rigid rotors. Previously, we discussed how we can able to balance a rigid rotor using cradle balancing machine or using an influence coefficient method, which is more advanced method. Today we will be extending the balancing method for flexible rotor. Especially we will be concentrating first on the modal balancing method. Initially we will try to distinguish what is the basic difference between the rigid rotor balancing and the flexible rotor balancing, and then we will go in more detail about the modal balancing method, especially the principles of that, and then with we will try to see how we can able to balance a rotor up to second mode. What is the more detailed analysis for this we'll see in the today's lecture. So some of the terminology, and so this is the overview of the lecture in which various terminology will be introducing, like modal balancing of flexible rotor, dynamic balancing, modal eccentricity, this is the new concept which will be introducing, orthogonality condition of mode shapes. This we have encountered earlier, but we will be using them in the present formulation. Residual unbalance, corrective unbalance, these are the various terminology we will be introducing and using in the present presentation. When we are talking about the flexible rotor balancing, we previously described what is the difference between the flexible rotor and the rigid rotor. So any long rotor, when it is experiencing not appreciable amount of deformation, then it remains rigid, and the same rotor we can able to balance with whatever the rigid rotor balancing method we discussed earlier. But when the rotor speed increases and rotor bends while approaching a critical speed, the bend center line whirls around about the bearing axis, and additional centrifugal forces are set up, and the rigid rotor balancing becomes ineffective. So in this particular case, for flexible rotor balancing, there are two basic methods. One is the modal balancing, which was developed by these people, and then the second is the influence coefficient method, which was developed in 1980. So let us see what is in more detail how these two balancing methods are different, and how the rigid rotor balancing is not suitable for the flexible rotor balancing. So with this figure, this is the rigid rotor balancing which we discussed earlier, in which we try to balance the eccentric rotor with two planes. So for this we have F as the unbalanced force, and F1 and F2 we are putting the correction masses. So centrifugal force, these conditions we need to satisfy to balance the rigid rotor, not only this one but also the moments. This we discussed in the previous cases, but the same rotor, when the shaft is flexible or when the same rotor is near the critical speed, it will bend like this, and because of this we see that the effective eccentricity which was there earlier E, because of the deformation it will increase, and similarly if the correction masses, their effective radial distance from the center of rotation decreases. So earlier it was at R1 position, now it has become R1 minus Y1. Similarly, this second mass, correction mass, the radial position has changed. So now we can able to see that the equations which we wrote earlier, those will not be valid, because these centrifugal forces are not different. So these equations will not be valid here. and once they are not valid, so we don't have the balancing of the whatever the residual unbalance in the system. So basically we can able to see, because of the deformation of the shaft or due to the flexibility of the rotor, whatever the dynamic balancing we did for the rigid rotor is not valid for the flexible rotor case. In fact, sometimes it deteriorates the condition of the unbalance in the rotor system. Whatever the rigid rotor balancing correction masses we kept, maybe it will be having adverse effect on the rotor unbalance response. So this was the difference between the rigid rotor and the flexible rotor balancing. If we have a rotor like this, in which let us say this is a rigid rotor and the eccentricity of the rigid rotor is continuously changing, this is the eccentricity variation. So eta z is the eccentricity variation in one of the plane. This eta z is a rotating coordinate system. So if or body fixed rotating coordinate system. So with respect to that, let us say this is the variation of the eccentricity. On the similar lines, we can have eccentricity variation in the xi and z direction. So but in this particular case, let us we are considering in one of the plane. So if we want to balance this particular eccentric rotor, which is rigid rotor, with the help of two masses which we are keeping in plane 1 and plane 2. So their positions may be on the rotor, the orientation may be different, which is not visible here, but not only they are in the different plane, but also they are having different orientation. So these are the correction masses to balance this particular eccentricity of the rotor or unbalance of the rotor. Now if we want to balance this, what are the conditions we need to satisfy? Let us say for rigid rotor case. So in this case, whatever the summation of centrifugal force are there due to the variation of the eccentricity of the rotor itself, because this is the eccentricity, this is a mass per unit length. If we multiply it by z, that will be the mass of the rotor of a slice, and because this is the eccentricity, so that is the total unbalance. If we multiply by omega square, that will be the centrifugal force. This we are integrating over the whole length of the shaft. So this is the total centrifugal force acting in the xi direction due to the rotor eccentricity, and these are the correction mass component of the centrifugal force in the same xi direction. So this should be balanced. So whatever from the eccentric rotor and the correction masses should balance in this plane, not only in the other plane, the eta direction also it should balance the centrifugal force. So apart from the centrifugal force, the moment, if we take about any point of the centrifugal forces because of the continuous variation of the eccentricity as well as of the correction masses should also be balanced in both the planes. So xi z and eta z plane, the not only the force, also the moment should be 0 for rigid rotor balancing case. So you can able to see the location of the correction masses are z1, z2. So we have taken moment about this point, so that we can have moment of all, not only from the eccentricity of this, but also from the correction masses. So these four conditions we need to satisfy for the rigid rotor balancing, and this we need to do this particular whatever the balancing we have done is for rigid rotor. If we are changing the speed and if we are near the critical speed, the deflection of the shaft will take place, and these relations will not be valid because the correction masses which we have obtained is for this particular configuration, and because the deflection of the shaft will take place, these equations will not be valid, as we have seen in the previous slides. that once the shaft deforms, this centrifugal forces also changes. Now, to balance such a rotor in which continuous variation of the eccentricity is there, one way we can able to do theoretically, if we put some kind of continuous mass here, you can see the shape of this should be same, maybe the height may be different proportionately according to the position, radial position of the correction mass. So, this hatched line is basically the shape of that is similar to the eccentricity, but opposite. So, if we can put some kind of correction mass continuously varying like this and here, then we can able to balance this rotor for each and every slice of the rotor. So, in that particular case, what will happen if we rotate the rotor at any speed, if deformation take place, then also we can able to have the assurance that it will balance this particular unbalance in the rotor. So, but putting this kind of variation of the continuous correction mass is not feasible in practice. So, obviously we need to limit ourselves, and in that particular case we do balancing up to certain speed. So, now we will be describing two methods. One is the modal balancing method, and another the influence coefficient method, which we will be describing in the subsequent lecture. How we can able to balance particular mode, first mode, second mode, third mode, using the correction masses. So, before going to the modal balancing method, let us see the concept of the modal eccentricity, because earlier we introduced the concept of the modal mass, modal stiffness, modal forces. Now, this is the modal eccentricity. So, you can able to see there is a flexible rotor in which continuous variation of the eccentricity is taking place. So, this have been exaggerated, but the shape we would like to highlight here, that if we take one particular slice of the rotor here, the center of gravity is not only the radial position is changing, but also the orientation is changing as we are going along the length of the shaft. So, in this particular case we have one fixed coordinate system x and y, another is the rotating coordinate system xi and eta, which is rotating along with the rotor, and because it is fixed with the rotor xi and eta, we can have the projection of this eccentricity in these two plane, and you can able to see the variation of the eccentricity in xi direction along the length of the rotor. Z is varying like this, and this is also. So, these variations are continuously changing in magnitude and also in the direction. So, this particular eccentricity we can able to expand in the form of eigenfunction series in rotating coordinate system. Earlier we expanded the response of the system in terms of the eigenfunction, because response comes from the force. So, if we can express the response in terms of eigenfunction, then why not the force? So, basically here the eccentricity gives a centrifugal force, because of that we are getting a response, and that particular response earlier we expanded in the form of eigenfunction. So, here we are expressing the eccentricity in the form of eigenfunction of the system. So, it will depend upon what kind of rotor is there and what kind of boundary condition is there. We can able to get the eigenfunction from that, and this is some constant which will determine which mode will be contributing how much, and theoretically it will be having infinite terms, because if continuous rotor can have infinite number of eigenfunctions. This is in xi plane eccentricity variation, as we have shown in the previous slide. This is in the eta plane, and in both plane we have expressed the this eccentricity variation in terms of the eigenfunctions multiplied by some constant. If we take one of the equation like this one, we multiply this by eigenfunction both sides, and then we integrate over the domain. So generally we multiply by eigenfunction which is different as compared to the previous one. So let us say we are multiplying by m x m, then you can able to see that this is the same expression. Here we can use the orthogonality condition of the eigenfunction, and when m is equal to n, then it will be non-zero. If they are not equal, then it will be 0. So we will see this orthogonality conditions on the subsequent slide. Yeah, so this is one of the, this is the previous slide on extension of the previous slide. So here we applied the orthogonality condition. I will be showing the orthogonality condition for simply supported rotor case, how we can able to evaluate this particular integral also. So for simply supported case, this integral becomes L by 2. So this is the orthogonality condition in general. So this we already discussed earlier, that if m is not equal to n, then it becomes 0, and if it is same, then it is a constant quantity. And for simply supported rotor case, we have this as the eigenfunction. Earlier we obtained this also, and if we substitute this eigenfunction in this integral, we will see that when both are not equal, this quantity will be 0. If n is equal to m, this will be L by 2. So this property we used in here to calculate this. So now you can able to see, we can able to get the constant E xi n from this, like the xi n. So 2 by L this. This is the eccentricity variation in the direction of z, in the direction of xi along the z direction. So similarly, we can able to take the second this one, and we can able to obtain this constant. So this constant will be given as E eta n is equal to this much. So these are, we call it as modal eccentricity, and the subscript n, the second subscript, is representing which mode this particular eccentricity we are attaching. So these are the nth modal eccentricity in xi and eta direction. So now we know what is the basic difference between the flexible rotor and the rigid rotor balancing. Even now introduce the modal eccentricity concept. Now we will be focusing on the basic concept of the how we can able to use the modal balancing for a rotor. So in this particular case, the deflection of the shaft in xi direction, which will be function of z, and when we are talking about the flexible rotor, then we need to talk about at what speed we are operating. So this deformation or deflection is there at certain speed, and this deflection we can able to write in the form of series using the eigenfunction. So basically, any response we can able to write in the form of summation series in terms of the eigenfunction multiplied by some constant. This unknown constant is again attached with the particular mode. So this particular constant, as we had earlier for the eccentricity case, here it is C, earlier it was E in terms, so we should not confuse this with the previous one. So this particular constant is different. This is corresponding to the response, and the previous one was corresponding to the eccentricity. This eigenfunction is same as the previous one. For simply supported case, we have seen that this is a sine function, and the deflection, this deflection generally in practice we measure when the shaft is rotating at certain RPM, we can able to measure what is the response of the system. We can able to measure it either using proximity probe or any other probe, and with the help of some kind of reference signal to take care of the phase information of the response. Now, that particular expression, again we are multiplying both sides by a different eigenfunction, and so eigenfunction and also mass per unit length, and we are integrating over the domain. So, the previous expression we have multiplied by 2 terms, and we are integrating over the domain. Both sides we have multiplied, and here you can able to see again we can able to use the orthogonality condition to simplify this. So, whenever these two functions are having same subscript, we will be having this particular term as some constant mn, which we call as generalized mass, and if they are not same, then it will be 0. So, using this property, this expression can be simplified, and similarly the orthogonality condition for when we have double derivative of the eigenfunction, then also we have when both subscript m and n are different, this will be 0, but if they are same, then is some other constant, that is kn, and we define these mn and kn as generalized mass and generalized stiffness for nth mode. So, this is in the same line as we described earlier the eccentricity, modal eccentricity. So, here modal mass and modal stiffness have been defined. In vibration, this is called generalized mass and generalized stiffness for for one particular mode. So, using this orthogonality condition, the previous equation which we multiplied, this we can able to simplify this expression. So, this equation is as it is, but now you can able to see for m is equal to m, only terms that term is there, remaining terms are 0, and this can be, because this is constant, this will come out, and this quantity we defined as modal or generalized mass. And from this expression we can able to solve for the constant, unknown constant, like this. So, m we have taken this side. So, this is the unknown constant, where modal mass we define like this integral. So, now you can able to see we could able to get the this constant which was there in the chosen series of the response. This constant we could able to get from using this analysis. Okay. Now, we will take up the governing equation of the shaft in continuous system approach, and we are taking this in the xi z plane. So, this is the equation of motion which we derived during the transverse vibration of vibration when we considered using continuous system approach. So, you can able to see this prime is basically derivative with respect to z, 2 prime is a double derivative with respect to z, similar to this derivative. So, this is the elastic component and this is the inertia component. So, in this, apart from the response, we have the eccentricity also we have included in this, and the time derivative, because the rotor is rotating at omega speed. So, that derivatives come in the form of omega square. So, basically this is the inertia force and this is the elastic force in the continuous system approach. Now, we will be substituting the eccentricity which we expressed earlier in the form of series, also the response in the form of series will be substituting in this equation of motion. So, here you can able to see we have substituted the response because it contains double derivative, this is constant. So, double derivative will come in the eigenfunction, and here this is the response, and this is the eccentricity expansion, and this all the summation is varying from 1 to infinity. So, for all the possible mode of the continuous system. Now, we will be multiplying both sides of this equation by eigenfunction of mth mode, and then we will be integrating over the length of the shaft, and we will be noting the orthogonality condition to simplify the expression. So, once we multiply this by xm, this term will give us this, and here again we are multiplying by this and integrating over the length of the shaft. So, now in this here we are doing this this particular term, we are doing integration by part twice by taking this as first function and this is a second function. So, that this derivative comes here. So, basically this is the first term, different integration of the second term limit, and then minus this is the differentiation of the first term, integration of the second term 0 to L. So, in 2 steps we are doing in one shot to the integration by part, and then the third term will be double derivative of this and integration of the second term twice. So, and this term we have split in 2 parts. So, this is corresponding to the response and this is corresponding to the eccentricity. In this we will see that this particular first 2 terms will be 0 for all possible boundary conditions in a rotor system. So, like for simple boundary condition of cantilever case, we have here displacement is 0. So, for if it is our axis system is z 0 and L. So, for z is equal to L, we will be having the shear force and bending moment 0, and this term is bending moment. So, you can able to see for z is equal to L, this term will be 0, for x is equal to 0, this term will be 0. So, both the terms will be 0. Similarly, here for x is equal to L, the shear or this particular term will be 0. Sorry, this is a shear force because derivative, third derivative is there, and this is the bending moment. So, bending moment and shear force are 0 at x is equal to L, and at x is equal to 0 or z is equal to 0, this slope is 0. So, you can able to see these 2 terms are 0 for all possible boundary conditions. Now, whatever the left out terms are there, we will apply the orthogonality conditions here. And so, from the first term here, the terms corresponding to xm will be non-zero, other terms will be 0. So, this expression will come like this, and in the right hand side we have already this as the generalized mass, this is also generalized mass, these constants are outside this integral. So, these are the generalized mass and these are the constants corresponding to the response and the eccentricity. This we earlier saw, this particular equation is nothing but generalized stiffness. So, that can be written like this, and they will be basically 0 for if m is equal to m is not equal to n. So, that means only one term will be left out corresponding to m is equal to m, other will be 0. So, the corresponding generalized stiffness is written here. So, now we can able to see that this particular expression we could able to get this. Now, in this basically our aim is to obtain the what is the eccentricity variation in the shaft. So, if we can find out this constant, then we can able to obtain the distribution of the eccentricity along the length of the shaft. So, this equation we can able to solve for E psi m like this. So, in this basically now we know all the terms in the right hand side, like this this is the ratio of the generalized mass, generalized stiffness by generalized mass, which is nothing but the natural frequency for the mth mode. This is the spin speed of the shaft. This is the constant from the response. So this we already seen how we can able to get this if we know the response of the system, because response can be measured, and from there we can able to get this constant. So once we know this eccentricity, we can able to get the how the eccentricity will be varying along the length of the shaft. So this distribution will be known because we express this eccentricity variation in terms of the eigenfunction and these constants earlier. For calculating the C, we require these terms. So distribution of the mass, that is per unit length of the shaft, that we can able to measure from geometry we can able to obtain, and from mass property of the shaft. This eigenfunction we can able to obtain for the system for the chosen boundary conditions, and this again generalized mass is expressed in terms of the mass distribution and the eigenfunction. So you can able to see that with the help of these quantity we can able to get the how the distribution of the eccentricity will be there. And once we know this eccentricity variation, then we can able to balance the rotor, because this is the main aim. What is the eccentricity variation? If we know this, we can able to balance the rotor. So we outline basic method of modal balancing. Now we will use this particular method for balancing a simply supported rotor. In this particular case, we will try to balance the rotor for two modes, and we will be balancing the rotor first by the first mode and then the second mode. So now let us see the example here. So we have a shaft which is basically continuous shaft, and this is a flexible shaft. That means we will be operating the rotor around up to the second critical speed of this particular rotor. In this this is the variation of the eccentricity, which is continuously varying along the shaft of the shaft, and we don't know what is the variation of this. Actually we need to find out, and based on this actually we need to balance this particular rotor up to second critical speed, because finding exactly what will be the eccentricity variation will be very difficult. So we will be focusing mainly, because the first few critical speeds are important and they are dangerous, because normally the rotors are operating at that range. So we will be taking two planes. So here basically, so this is the shaft, and we will be taking one plane and two plane here. M1 and M2 are, let us say, correction masses which we are keeping in these two planes. And in this particular rotor we are not shown this particular eccentricity. So this is actually this particular step kind of thing is there. That is the eccentricity corresponding to the mass which we have put at the outside of the rotor, because rotor is having radius R1 and R2. Generally it will be uniform. Even if they are not uniform, we can able to choose different radius, no problem. So and this mass will be having some finite length. So these are the basically eccentricity corresponding to these masses. We'll see how we can able to get this eccentricity in the subsequent slide. And basically now this is the superposition of these two. So that means to balance this particular eccentricity, which is residual eccentricity in the system, we have put two masses. So how the eccentricity will vary, because this will add up here, because this side is a negative direction, this eccentricity is there. So that will add up to give this particular shape. So here it will add up to give this shape. So basically these steps are corresponding to the the concentrated mass correction masses which we have kept. So, we are expecting that these two masses will balance the rotor up to second speed, critical speed. The meaning of that not only it will balance the first mode near the first critical speed, also it will balance the second critical speed, and our aim would be to obtain the M1 and M2. So, now let us see how we can able to do this. So, coming to the initial eccentricity which we have shown in the figure A, first figure, we can able to express that in terms of the infinite series in the form of some constant and the eigenfunction. This constant, as we already seen earlier, can be expressed like this, where alpha will be given by this. Now, for simply supported case, we already know this alpha will be L by 2 because this is a sine function, and if we evaluate this value, this will be L by 2 for simply supported boundary condition. But for other boundary condition, the eigenfunction will change and corresponding this alpha will be changing. Now, the eccentricity of the correction mass which we kept, they are given like this. So, in this we can able to see that the correction masses are at R1 location, and the eccentricity which we are calculating. So, basically we are equating the force which this particular correction mass is giving. So, basically M1 R1 omega square will be the force corresponding to that correction mass, and rho is the mass of the mass per unit length of the shaft. So, corresponding to the shaft eccentricity, mass of the shaft, and this eccentricity to omega square will be the equivalent force which the shaft eccentricity will exert. So, we can able to calculate the shaft eccentricity equivalent to the correction mass like this. So, this is in plane 1 and this is in plane 2, and in this we expect that the correction masses are negligibly small as compared to the mass per unit length of the shaft. So, basically M1 prime and M2 prime are mass per unit length of the correction mass. So, here you can able to see this is the mass of the correction mass in plane 1, and this is the length of the correction mass. That length is some finite length. So, whatever the length is there, that we are calling it delta z. So, M1 prime is the mass per unit length of the correction masses in plane 1, and this is in plane 2. And we are assuming here this particular eccentricity which we are calculating, because mass which we are putting in the correction planes, they will not be much different. So, we are assuming that these eccentricity which we are calculating, they are equal, and we are representing that as a E prime z. Now you can able to see this is the basically eccentricity due to the correction masses which are given here. So, this height is eccentricity due to the correction masses. Now, we are expanding this eccentricity due to the correction masses in the similar form as with the help of eigenfunction. So, this is the expansion. This is the expansion, and in this is the constant for particular mode. So, this is the distribution of the eccentricity, this is the constant, and this constant will be defined like this in the similar form as we defined for the eccentricity of the shaft. Now, in this we are substituting the eccentricity, because we have over the length of the shaft only at two places this eccentricity is there. One is here and here over the length of the shaft, and we are assuming that this distance is z1 and z2, and around this the length of the shaft over which this eccentricity is distributed is delta z. So you can able to see that we will be having integration from z1 minus half of delta z to plus, and in that we have the that is first eccentricity distribution, that is corresponding to E1, this one, and in the second remaining region this eccentricity is 0. So in the second case where the second plane is there, this will be the eccentricity constant. So now you can able to see that we can able to express this like this, and because this particular integration is there at that particular very small location, the length of the shaft. So we can able to, now in this next slide we will show how we can able to get this from this integral. So the first integral is like this. So let us say this xi n bar is the integration of this function, and if we are keeping the limits of this, we will get like this for the first limit, and for second limit another term will be there. If we expand that using Taylor series expansion, we will see that this is the first term and this is the second term, because the differentiation of this term will be there. So the integration term will go away. So once we expand this function for these two cases up to the first derivative, we will get these two terms, and in this will get cancelled, and the second and fourth term will give us this, and similarly for the second integration we will get this, which we have substituted in the previous here. So basically these are the quantity which we obtained along with the from here. Now once we obtain this, the eccentricity after balancing, this we already seen in the third figure, in which along with the eccentricity of the shaft, eccentricity of the correction mass was also shown. So that distribution we can able to express like this, again in the form of eigenfunction, and this constant will be given as the constant of the shaft eccentricity and of the correction mass eccentricity. So these two we obtain here, this is eccentricity, and so this is due to the shaft eccentricity, these are due to the eccentricity due to the correction mass, and where alpha is given by this. Now in the modal balancing, the eccentricities E1 and E2, these are coefficients up to the second mode. So in the here basically we need to balance this up to the n is equal to 1 and 2. So correspondingly we need to these eccentricity E1 bar and E2 bar we need to vanish up to the second mode. So is diminished by adding total mass m1 and m2 at plane 1 and 2. So basically we are removing these two eccentricity by addition of the correction mass m1 and m2 in plane 1 and 2 respectively, and this total mass will be calculating first by balancing the first mode and then for the second mode. So the necessary masses m1 and m2 are determined in the following procedure. The first will make sure that there is no vibration in the first mode by adding the mass m1 1 in the correction plane 1. So m1 is the first mass in plane 1, the second subscript is representing plane 1. In practice this is chosen approximately. To obtain this, the eccentricity of the first mode E1 must be 0, that is the condition, this following condition must be satisfied. That means for n is equal to 1, the previous expression, this expression E1 bar should be 0 because we want to balance the first mode, and here E1 and other terms are there. So, that means we are trying to balance the first mode with M1 one mass, which we are keeping in the plane 1, because for first mode only one mass, one plane balancing is enough. So, that is why for first mode we are using only single plane, which is plane 1. Now, once we accomplished, so basically this mass will be choosing, so we will be rotating the rotor in the around first critical speed. We will choose this particular mass such that the responses are diminishing. That means this E1 we expect will be 0 corresponding to this particular mass. Now, after we accomplish the balancing of the first mode, we will proceed for the second mode balancing, that means E2. And in this particular case, we will be keeping the two masses in two planes. So, this is the first mass in first plane, this is second mass in the second plane. These are the additional mass as compared to the previous mass which we kept. Now, now we will be writing the same equation, the previous equation, this equation for n is equal to 1 and n is equal to 2, because now we are keeping two masses, and when we n is equal to 1, so the same expression. So, when we are keeping these two masses, we are ensuring that here E1 should be there, but we are ensuring that these two masses should this should not disturb the E1, because we already balanced the E1 by the previous M1 one mass. So, that means this condition will ensure that whatever the choice of these two masses M12 and M22 is there, that should ensure the first mode is not disturbed, it is balanced. This is for n is equal to 2, in which E2 is there, and these are the two additional masses. So, you can able to see that the choice of these two masses will be such that the ratio, from this we can able to get the ratio, because other quantities are known. So, what should be the ratio of these two will ensure that the first mode is balanced. So, if we satisfy this equation while choosing these two masses, we will be ensuring that the first mode is balanced, and simultaneously we need to see that the E2 is getting balanced. So, that means we will be choosing the M12 and M22, and we are rotating the rotor near this second critical speed, and we will try to change that masses, but ratio will keep the same, such that the response is getting minimized corresponding to the second mode. So, that will ensure not only the second mode is balanced, but also the first mode is not disturbed. So, this is the discussion which I explained. So, basically now this is a summary. We balanced the first mode by one mass, then the second mode by two masses like this. So, you can able to do the second mode, and the total balancing is the summation of these two. So, basically we will be having in plane 1 you can able to see here in plane 1 summation of this, and this will be the total mass which will be keeping it to balance the first mode and second mode, and in the plane 2 this mass will be there. In today we have seen how a flexible rotor balancing is different as compared to the rigid rotor balancing, and once we differentiated this, we then introduced the concept of the modal eccentricity in the line with the modal mass and modal stiffness which we introduced in the previous lectures. Then we focused on a particular method of balancing a flexible rotor, that is a modal balancing. In this particular case, we balance the rotor mode by mode. That means we start with the lowest mode balancing of the rotor, and then gradually we go up to the mode up to which we want to balance the rotor. And with a very simple case of a simply supported rotor, and we try to show the analysis how this modal balancing can be used to balance the rotor up to second mode by using two planes. which will balance not only the first mode as well as it will balance the second mode. In the subsequent lecture, now we will be taking up another method which is more advanced and more powerful. There is an influence coefficient method for flexible rotor balancing.